Once again, this is Otherworldly Fundraising. Our fundraising efforts are benefiting one simple wish. Link to donate is located within the description. Please welcome our moderator for the next panel. Steph is here with us. Steph, thank you so much for being here. The stage is yours. Who do we have up now for the 1 o'clock hour of Otherworldly Fundraising? Take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steph, and I'm a book blogger at Pages of Novels. Today, I will be interviewing author Denise Webb. Hi. So, to get us started, I wanted to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and your books for people that might not have read your work yet.
Sure. As you said, my name is Denise Webb. I've been a freelance writer and editor of nonfiction my whole career, focusing on health and nutrition. And I started on fiction maybe 8 years ago. It was a long road, but I'm focusing now on women's fiction. I started off, I wrote a paranormal romance, which I would prefer to forget. But yeah, I started off with When Robins Appear, which is women's fiction, published by Red Adept Publishing in 2020. And it's the story of the Earl family. There's some medical crises they have to go through, mother-daughter relationships, all that sort of stuff. And I'm really proud of it. It's gotten a very good reception. My second novel just came out the beginning of August, called Breathing in Reverse. And it was a little switch. It's definitely women's fiction, but with more of a dash of suspense and romance. It's about a celebrity stalker and the consequences of the people that are around the celebrity and how that happens. So it's a little early to tell, but so far so good. It's only been a few weeks. And I'm working on a third novel, which I'm about 3/4 of the way through.
Did you always want to be a writer, like even when you were younger?
I don't think I ever really thought that much about fiction writing. I definitely I've always enjoyed language and words. And as I said, that was mainly in the form of nonfiction. I've written for newspapers, magazines, newsletters, corporations, PR firms, advertising agencies, pretty much anything you can think of, but it was not fiction. And I just got the itch to start writing some fiction. And I had a dear friend who just told me to go for it. And it took a while. I went to a lot of meetups, a lot of online conferences, read a lot of books about how to write, how not to write, and basically craft books. Yeah, so eventually I got it done.
When you were working at newspapers, you did like health and nutrition sections?
Yeah, it's been several years ago, but I used to live in New York, and I wrote a column for the New York Times for a few years called Eating Well. I was actually a fill-in for a woman by the name of Marion Burroughs, who used to do the regular column, and she was out for quite a while, and I was the fill-in. I didn't work in the office. Even back then, it was remote. But yeah.
As a writer, where does your inspiration for fiction stories come from?
Well, I've often said I'm not one of these writers that has like a notebook of story ideas waiting to be written. They tend to come to me one at a time, and I'm a slow writer. But the first novel, When Robins Appear, actually triggered from an incident with my daughter. She was in high school, and one of her classmates had a very serious skateboarding accident. And so that was the initial idea. And there is skateboarding character in the story. They're in high school. But it really sort of shifted from there and went more into the mother-daughter relationship. But that was where the story idea originally came from. And I don't know, that's when I'm writing, that's what tends to happen. I start out with a little grain of an idea, and it just I don't outline, I don't pre-plan a lot. Usually I know how I want it to start, I know how I want it to end, and everything in between just sort of happens. And it's not the best way to write. It's not the quickest way to write. For me, it's the best way to write. But I know a lot of writers that just meticulously plan out every scene before they even sit down to the computer. And I've tried it. I've tried outlines. I bought a cork board with the index cards. I was like, I'm going to do it this time. It just doesn't work for me. It takes the fun out of it. So yeah. And anyway, my second book, Breathing in Reverse, I'm not 100% sure. Well, I take that back. It came from an interview several years ago with a young celebrity, and he was the it thing back then, and screaming girls and the whole bit. And an interviewer asked him, "So where do you think it's going to go from here?" And his response was sort of laughing it off. Well, somebody could jump out of the crowd and stab me and it'd all be over. And I don't know, it just really resonated with me how vulnerable celebrities can be. And that's where the story jumped off from. But in this case, it's an innocent bystander who ends up being the stalker's victim because she thinks that they're in some sort of competition for the celebrity's affections.
A lot of writers are also readers. Do you tend to read in the genres that you write in?
I think I prefer the genre that I write in, but I do read. Every once in a while, I'll read YA, a rom-com, literary fiction. So it's kind of all over the place. But I do prefer women's fiction.
Were you a reader growing up as well, or did you come to reading like later in life?
I think I got into reading later. Yeah, I don't remember, I remember assigned readings in middle school and high school and college, but I don't remember being a library patron, which I am now. So yeah, I think it came later. But you have to be a reader, at least in my opinion, you have to be a reader to be a writer. You learn so much from reading other people's books, drafts, beta reads. When somebody first develops their manuscript and they just want to get a general impression from readers, does it work? Is it flowing? Does it make sense? And you get these people called beta readers to go over it for the first time before you try sending it out to publishers or agents.
Do you feel that your experiences working at newspapers and magazines and in the industry in some way helped you as a fiction writer?
Absolutely. Fiction is a different animal completely, but they're just having a love for language and being able to convey coherent thoughts in complete sentences is a skill in itself. And I think some of that was transferable. But storytelling, that's a whole different thing that you have to learn how to do. And it's not easy.
Do you have any tropes that you like including in your work?
Truths?
Tropes?
Oh, tropes. Yeah, I think there's always a relationship, a male-female relationship, but it's different levels. Like in when robins appear, there's the mother and the wife and the husband, their relationship. There's the daughter and her boyfriend's relationship. There's the best friend and her boyfriend's relationship, and they're all very different. They all have different issues. They all have different progressions. And in Breathing in Reverse, there's a conflict between the young woman who's being stalked, sort of subsequent to the celebrity. She has issues with her parents. There's her parents' relationship. So I do, And again, in When Robins Appear, there was heavy emphasis on mother-daughter relationships. In fact, every other chapter is written in terms of the mother's POV and then the daughter's POV. So you know what's going on in both of their heads. I just like to dig into emotions, relationships, which is a lot of what women's fiction is based on. But women's fiction, unlike romance, does not have to have a happy ever after ending. And my books tend to be sad and bittersweet, I guess. There's some happiness, hope, but I prefer endings that are just really sort of grab you.
Do you have any, going back to reading, do you have any favorite authors that you enjoy reading?
I should have thought about this in advance. There is an author, she writes literary fiction. Her name is Lionel Shriver. I like her work a lot. She's written such a diverse set of novels with different storylines. I guess my favorite was Post Birthday World. And one of my favorite books to date is sort of the inspiration for the book that I'm working on, is a book by Jill Santopolo. It's called, I think I'm pronouncing her name right. It's called The Light We Lost. I loved that book, and it really sort of triggered an idea for the book that I'm working on now.
We have a question from our guest liaison, Kristen, and she's asking, how does being in the Writers Association help your career?
Oh, immensely. I belong to the Women's Fiction Writers Association and also Writer Unboxed. I do a monthly column for Writer Unboxed on the business of publishing. It's basically a collection of stories that have happened in the month. It can be everything from book bans to what's happening with Barnes and Noble, sales of publishing like Simon and Schuster, that sort of thing. So that really keeps me up to date. The Women's Fiction Writers Association has just been a pillar of support and being able to commiserate with other writers, mostly women writers. And we've helped each other over the years an unbelievable amount. They're just out there. They will read your stuff. You can post something on the Women's Fiction Writers Association Facebook page, which is just for members, and say, look, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? Or what's the best word? I can't think of this word. I mean, and you'll get tons of responses. It's almost like having a mini critique group, on very specific. And I've gotten critique groups from Women's Fiction Writers Association. In fact, I'm in one right now, and we meet every 2 weeks online, and we exchange pages in advance, and then we give feedback. And that's all as a result of being a member of Women's Fiction Writers Association. Plus, they have webinars on a regular basis. They have annual conferences, which I'm actually about to go to, the 10th anniversary Women's Fiction Writers Association conference on the 20th in Chicago. So there'll be a lot of people that I've known for a while online that I haven't met in person. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
And you feel that being in the Women's Writers Association has made you a better writer?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, and they have these workshops that you can sign up for, and you submit your pages, and other members will critique it. Sometimes they have an agent like Donald Moss, which is a major agent in New York, and he'll read your stuff and give you feedback. First few pages, first sentences, first paragraph. They have different workshops for all sorts of different things that really help you along the way to get going. Oh, and they have write-ins, which it's every day of the week, different times, and you log on and you say, hi, what are you up to? there may be 15 people on there, and you say what you're going to do during the next hour and a half, and everybody they don't log off, but they turn off the camera and the sound, and you just write, and then you come back and you say what you got done, and if you've got any news. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. You get to know a lot of other writers that way.
Yeah, as a writer who also like does some fiction as well, I find that like writing is very solo, but I find that writing with other people in the way that you describe, where you like all work on your own thing, but you're all like in the same room, either like online or in person, really helps.
Exactly. I don't know. There's some sort of camaraderie, and you're not alone anymore, basically.
We have a question from the chat. Do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
Yeah, there are a lot of things that I could point out. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different path. Some people, I've known writers that right out of the gate, they submit to an agent, they get accepted, and they get a big book deal, and sometimes a 2-book contract. You have people that will end up self-publishing, and they're very happy that way. You make more money when you self-publish, generally. The route that I went, I did submit to agents, but I never got an acceptance. So I started submitting to smaller publishers. And Red Adept Publishing was the one that accepted my first manuscript and my second manuscript. And I've been very pleased with them. The publisher is very hands-on, willing to try all sorts of different promotional things. They have an editing branch, which is separate from the publishing. Now, if you're published with them, the editing goes with it. But if you're not published with them, you can hire their editing services. And their editing services, from my experience, have been excellent. I guess this may sound simplistic, but you can't give up. It can take, rejection, chronic rejection is just a part of the deal. It's a part of the business. And again, like I said earlier, reading, you have to read. And I would suggest reading outside your genre. It just really, it opens your mind to different ways of expressing yourself that you wouldn't have thought of. In fact, when I read, I keep a note on my phone of, it might be a verb, it might be an adjective, it might be a little phrase that I can tweak to make my own. But it was like, oh, I hadn't thought about expressing it like that. That's excellent. And then you just take that and you work with it. So being aware of language, being aware of, you can't really write to the market so much because the market changes so quickly. And usually if you go with a traditional publisher, you're talking about a 2-year timeline. And the market will have changed by the time that book gets published. Smaller publishers tend to be have a much shorter time frame, maybe a year and a half. But yeah, and attend as many conferences if you can't afford to go in person, some online things. There are meetup groups in most areas. I started out going to local meetup groups. I live in Austin, Texas. I went to several meetup groups for probably a couple of years. It's just random people that you've never met, and you exchange pages there on the spot, read a few pages, and then everybody talks about it. And you have to develop, I've often said, being from Texas, I said, you have to develop the skin of an armadillo because it can be brutal sometimes, but you really learn. If you walk away with one thing from maybe a couple of hour meetup, I'd say you're ahead of the game. So there's all kinds of things you can do. Reading craft books. There's a lot of free online things you can watch, and belonging to some place like Women's Fiction Writers Association. I can't remember what the dues are. I think they're like maybe only $50 a year or something. And you have access to all these people and all this input. Some of the webinars are free that go along with the membership. Others you have to pay an additional fee, but it's well worth it.
As a reader, do you review the books and like post your reviews online as well?
Of other people's books?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. However, I will never leave a negative review. If I don't like something as an author, I'm not going to go there. If I don't like it, I just don't say anything. If you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. You have people that, and that's another thing you have to build up thick skin to, are these ratings, because every single time you're going to get a handful of people that are going to give you a 1-star rating, no review, and you doubt that they ever even read it. It's just they get their kicks out of doing that. Even some of the best-selling books, writers that have like 100,000 ratings or something, you can look and they will have 1-star reviews. That part of that goes to just mean people, and part of it goes to everybody interprets a book differently. Everybody's tastes are different. One person's, man, this is the best book I read all year, is the other person's, wow, I did not finish this. I couldn't deal. So yes, answer is I do when I like it.
As a writer, do you read reviews on your own books?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of people don't. A lot of writers say, not going there. I read every single one. Sometimes you can learn something from them. I thought that some people have said in When Robins Appear, I thought the mom Deb was a little whiny. I was like, that never occurred to me. But in subsequent books, maybe I'll be a little more careful not making the main female character sound whiny. So yeah, you can learn something from them, but again, you have to be able to cope with them.
Um, we have another comment from Kristen, who says that she's never written a mystery, but always enjoys um, cozy mysteries. Is cozy mystery a genre that you tend to enjoy as well?
I have to say I have never even read a cozy mystery. Um, that's not my genre of choice, but they're very popular. I don't know if that says something about me, but yeah, no, I don't read cozy mysteries.
When you start working on a project, what comes first to you? Like the characters or like part of the story?
Um, I think the storyline comes
Yeah.
first, and then the characters. And a lot of writers fret over characters' names and spend a lot. I don't know. With me, I find that a name sort of, it's like, okay, that sounds right. That's it. I'm done. Unless I discover later on that I've got 5 characters' names who all start with D or something, then I have to go back and change it. But yeah, I think I start with a vague idea of the storyline. Then, as I said, I know how I want it to start. I know how I want it to end. And the rest I develop as I go along. But yeah, storyline first, and then pretty close after characters.
I have a note from the producers backstage saying that we are $800 into our first goal of $1,000 for the weekend. So please donate if you can. Do you have any other hobbies besides writing?
Not really, unless you consider reading a hobby. I listen to a lot of music. Spotify is my muse, I guess you could say. Um, my tastes tend to run youngish. Um, I I don't tend to listen much to music of my generation. I like to know what's current. Um, I'm obsessed right now with a Scottish singer. His name is Leo Capaldi, I think. Yeah, he's like 20 something, and I love his voice. So I listen to a lot, and I get a lot of ideas from lyrics. Just like I said, reading books, and I'll see a phrase or a description, and I think, oh, that's awesome. I get a lot of ideas from song lyrics. And of course, you can't copy song lyrics, so you'd be in big trouble. But I'm talking about words, small phrases that really trigger an idea of something to touch on. So yeah, that's it. I don't sew, I don't knit, I don't crochet. Yeah, I don't have really any other hobbies.
You had mentioned earlier that you were a journalist. Was there a reason or that you wanted to get into fiction writing, or was it just you just wanted to try it at the time?
I think I just wanted to try it at the time. I mean, it's there's something about being creative, whatever you're being creative with, that I don't know. It just makes you feel good about yourself, about the world. you know, Even if I'm writing sad stories, it's like I do enjoy it a lot. However, I must say that I'm one of these weirdos that I enjoy the editing more than I do the writing. It's like once it's all there, then it's like, okay, now I can really make it into what I want. But getting the word, that's why I'm such a slow writer. Getting the words down on the page is a slow process for me. And I do what not everybody, but what a lot of people say you should not do. I edit as I go. I obsessively edit as I go. And then I go back and read it again. And so that slows me down. But I'm okay with it. It took me a while to be okay with it because I kept hearing you're not supposed to do that. People would say, just vomit out the story, get it out there, get it out on the page, and you can fix it later. And that doesn't feel good to me. So, yeah.
As a writer, do you participate in National Novel Writing Month in November?
As a slow writer, no, I do not. I've never done that, and I have no desire to try and do it. I know a lot of people do, and sometimes they get a really, really rough draft of their novel out of it, but I don't want to put myself under that kind of pressure. No.
Do you have I know that you were working on a third book. Do you have a fourth or a fifth story brewing, or do you focus on more on like one book at a time?
Well, like I said earlier, I don't have like a notebook full of story ideas, but as I'm getting like 3/4 of the way through this one, I am starting to kind of think of another one that I'm hoping I can make something out of it. I'm not even to the point now where I would know how I want it to end. I know the circumstance that I want to build it around, but yeah, I think I may have to get completely through with this first draft before I can focus that much attention on how I want it to end and who all the characters are and that sort of thing. But yeah, I do have another idea. But I'm really liking the one I'm working on right now, and I'm hoping it turns out like I want it to.
Do you add personality or aspects of yourself into any of your characters?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And even some circumstances, especially with when robins appear, mother-daughter relationship. I have a grown daughter, and a couple of things that happened in there were real exchanges, especially when she was little. So yeah, and maybe the whiny mom. Maybe I'm whiny. I don't know, but um, and it, like I said, the ending of the book is there's some sad circumstances, and I think my relationship with my daughter made me dig deeper, and make it feel more visceral. in the writing and the reading. So yeah, I think every author, even if you're writing fantasy, I think you inject some of your personality, your life experience, your emotions into the book. I think it's inevitable. Even if you write murder mysteries.
Julia from the chat is wondering if you write sequentially or if you jump around in the story.
I write sequentially, definitely. And again, by this obsessive editing thing, I write a chapter, go back, edit, move forward, go back, read, re-edit, and it's just a little at the time in chunks. But I'm one of my critique partners in this group that we have that we meet every other week. She does not write sequentially, and as a reader, I'm like, okay, now did this happen after or before, or what's the time frame here? And it works for her, but for me, I write sequentially, definitely.
I know you said that you have like your beginning and the end, and you kind of like take the middle as it comes. When you're planning the beginning and the end, do you have any like ideas for scenes in the middle that you want to do and you just don't know where to put them? Or do you just have no idea for how the middle of the story is going to go?
Oh, I definitely have some scenes, but it's just like splotches, it's like I would like for this to happen at some point. I would like for this to happen at some point, but where? It's like the story that I'm working on now. It's a present and past, every other chapter, now and then, and it's a challenge to make sure that each one flows on its own, and you're not jumping the gun with something that's happened. But again, writing sequentially in that respect, I think helps. Eventually, when I get to the end, I'll print out all the now chapters, read them through, print out all the then chapters, read them through, and make sure that it flows the way it should. But yeah, I do have some idea of what I want to happen, but there's so many words in between the beginning and the end. I don't have the whole thing figured out.
As a writer, do you struggle writing dialogue, or does dialogue come pretty easily to you?
Ooh, dialogue is one of my best things. I I actually enjoy dialogue, and I've been told that my dialogue is strong. Um, I think I kind of think dialogue either comes naturally to you, or you have to figure out a skill set to do it to where it doesn't sound fake, you know. Um, but I enjoy dialogue immensely, and yeah, I think that's probably one of my better skills in writing.
Sandra from the chat says that my college papers were all edited as I wrote. Took longer, but I couldn't help myself. Adding you to my authors list. When you were a student and coming up, is that how you wrote your papers as well? Was that like you always edited as you went?
That was a long time ago. I I'm trying to remember. God, I honestly do not remember how I approached it in college. But when I started on my writing career, yes, even when it was nonfiction, I edit as I go. And even now, if I'm writing something, um, like I just wrote a story. I'm still writing health and nutrition articles as well, and I just wrote a story on cultivated meat. Meat that's grown in a lab from animal cells, and that I start throwing things in there. I don't do an outline, which again would be more efficient, but I know the information that I want to put in there, and I end up just moving things around a lot. But yeah, I don't remember college, but when I started my writing career, editing career, yeah, I edit as I go, edited as I go.
As writers, I feel like we try and love all of our books equally, but do you have a favorite book and a favorite character that you've written?
Well, maybe it's this thing of love the one you're with, but I very much like the story that I'm working on, and I like the characters a lot. Yeah, I think right now my characters, there's a acquaintance slash friend here in Austin, and her name is Cecilia, and I just got hooked on that name, and I emailed her and asked her, do you mind if I use your, because I doubt there are a lot of Cecilias out there. I said, do you mind if I use your name for a character? And she was like, no, sure, go ahead. So yeah, I right now I'm liking Cecilia, and she has a relationship with an Irish singer by the name of Killian, and I have a Irish online acquaintance. I don't know him. He was referred to by a friend, and he's give me advice on what an young Irish person might and might not say. So that's been a lot of fun. I've always had a thing for accents, so this has been challenging. I'm watching a lot of Irish movies and shows.
Do you you said that you still work in nonfiction as well. Do you like take a day for writing nonfiction and then take a day for working on fiction stuff, or do you do both at different times of the day?
I don't have a specific fiction writing schedule. It depends on the ebb and flow of my nonfiction work. Sometimes I'll go a few days and I don't really have nonfiction to work on, and I might go to a coffee shop and spend several hours, 2 or 3 days in a row. Then I might get busy and have a few days where I don't even look at the fiction. Or if I do, it might be late at night and I move a couple of words around, But yeah, it's a hodgepodge. It's a mix of just depending on what my schedule is, as to which one I work on and for how long.
When you're writing a story, do you tend to enjoy writing for your main characters or your supporting characters more?
I think the main characters, but I do try to make a point of making my supporting characters interesting on their own. Sometimes it may be a brief encounter. In the story I'm working on, there's a manager at a health food store, and I I like him a lot, and it's a very brief scene, but I think he's got a character, and I think that's what I try to do with my uh, secondary characters. Is they may not play an important role in the plot, but they should try to be anyway, interesting in and of themselves.
Christopher in the chat says someone once told me that my prose is the stuff between the dialogue, and as a fiction writer, I kind of feel this way too. Is that like I'm starting to get better now, but like when I was starting, I really struggled with dialogue. Did you always find dialogue easy even like during your first fiction book?
Oh, sorry, I've got a dog barking.
Did you always find it easy to write dialogue?
I think so. Yeah, easier than the rest of it. And I think my books tend to have a lot of dialogue. Um, but it's like right now I started reading a book called I Have Some Questions for You, and I can't remember the author's name right now. But there's not a lot of dialogue. It's mainly um, descriptions, talking about things in the past. And I don't dwell on that. I don't do as, I mean, I've got flashbacks and thoughts of the past and that sort of thing, but I don't have a lot of page space taken up with just prose. I think dialogue conveys a lot. I have a lot of inner monologue as to what what the characters are thinking, hoping, wishing, regretting, that sort of thing. But yeah, I think dialogue has always been the easiest part of it for me.
As a reader, are you a reader that reads more than one book at a time, or do you tend to focus on one book at a time?
I prefer one book at a time, but sometimes circumstances are such that I belong to a readers writing group. I mean, a writers book club, and the deadline's coming up, and I have to read the book for the book club. In fact, Monday is the book club for this book that I'm reading. I have some questions for you, and I don't think I'm going to finish in time. But I also do beta reading for a beta reading service, and sometimes they'll send me a manuscript, so I have to finish that. And then there'll be a book that I'm reading maybe for a writer friend, or an ARC, an advanced reader copy. So I prefer one book at a time, but I tend to find myself reading more than one book / manuscript at a time.
When you're beta reading or reading an arc for someone and they want feedback on it, are you the kind of person that will um offer general feedback, or will you offer more like specific, like spelling and grammar mistakes, or will you just look for like the plot holes and things like that?
Um, Not so much spelling and grammar unless it's just really blatant mistake, but I tend to go for questions, like, why would he do this when he just did that? Or, I know, and some of the writers I know well, and I'll say, I know this is a favorite subject of yours, but I think maybe it went into a little bit too much detail for the average reader, that sort of thing. Now, the beta reading service that I work for sometimes, they have a form that you have to fill out, and it's a word limit. So you can only say so much. So you have to be concise with what you want to say. But if a writer sends me their manuscript and I can just do comments in the side, I will, yeah, put a lot of comments about maybe you could express this a little differently. Maybe a stronger verb might work here. I might say something like that. But I enjoy reading other manuscripts, and you learn when you're reading other people's manuscripts, what works and what doesn't work. Same thing with reading books, published books.
You said that you had gotten into reading later in life. Was there a book that you read at the time that still sticks with you?
Um, I honestly can't say I remember. I mean, so many, so many good books out there. A lot of times I will put books on hold at the library, and it takes 50 forevers to get there. And then when it gets there, I'm busy with something else and I can't read it in 3 weeks, and you can't renew it because there's a long waiting list. But I can't remember a book that said, okay, this is it. I'm going to be a reader now. I wish I had a good answer, but I don't.
Do you as as a reader, do you look for mistakes, like not as like an arc or a beta reader, but are you one of those people that like looks for mistakes or plot holes in published works as well?
I don't actively look for them, but sometimes they just jump out at you, and I feel frustrated as a reader, and I feel frustrated for the writer that was not caught, you know. But I don't actively look for mistakes or, no, not at all.
Do you you said that you do a lot of like standalones or books that don't have other books that go along with them. Would you ever consider doing some kind of a series?
I know series are incredibly popular. I just don't think my brain works that way. Never say never, but at this point, I can't imagine writing a sequel to anything.
Do you plan your books that when you're reading, do you plan your books that you're gonna read next ahead of time, or or are you one of those readers that like it depends on the mood what you end up reading next? Or is it like whatever art comes next to you?
Yeah, well, like I said, I use the library a lot, so sometimes it just depends on when I've gotten off the hold list and what comes next. Um, but yeah, and on Amazon, if there are books that on pre-order and it's a reduced price, I'm more likely to order it. Um, when you read a lot, books are not cheap, so you have to balance. Okay, library, pre-order, full price. How am I gonna get this book? Um, but yeah, I don't have like a list of books that I want to read in the future. I put things on hold. If it comes in, I read it. If somebody asks me to read, or not ask me to read, but if somebody says, "Oh, this book was awesome," then yeah, I'll put it on hold at the library or see if it's on pre-order.
Do you tend to read more physical books, or do you tend to read more digitally, like on a Kindle or something like that?
I have a Kindle which is stuffed with books, but I prefer a physical book. That's why I use the library. I mean, the library, of course, has ebook rentals, but yeah, I prefer a physical book. So I get that whenever I can.
You said that you mentioned earlier that your books are through a small publisher. Is that something that you recommend to aspiring writers to get their work out there quicker?
Um, yes, it depends on the publisher because there are tons of small publishers out there. You just have to do a lot of detective work as to what their reputation is, connect with other authors that are with that publisher. If you can get honest feedback as to what their experience has been. But yeah, small publishers can be great. And there's some larger publishers like Bookouture, which is it's you can submit without an agent. That's the thing is with a small publisher, you don't have to have an agent. And getting an agent is like a major hoop you have to jump through. You skip that step most of the time with small publishers. I mean, some agents submit themselves to small publishers, but as a writer, you can do it directly most of the time. And yeah, that's good. It's good. It does make the timeline shorter, and you skip that awful part of trying to find an agent. But I mean, even small publishers, they have a lot of rejections. It's not that they're easier to get into the publisher itself. It's just that you skip the really hard part of getting an agent.
When you're getting a new book on the market, do you stick with the Women's Fiction Association for your reviews, or do you put them up on services like NetGalley or Edelweiss for bloggers and librarians to read early as well?
I haven't used NetGalley. I do book blog tours with a service that handles that, and they'll send it out to maybe 20 or so book bloggers, and then they post it on Instagram, and they'll put reviews on Goodreads, sometimes Amazon. I do a lot of Facebook ads, and I do Amazon ads, and yeah, I don't believe in paying for reviews. That's just me. And these book blog tours, you're paying for the service who then sends your book or your e-file out to bloggers. And if they decide it's not for them, then they don't review it. Sort of like my philosophy of, if you don't have something good to say, don't say anything at all. But yeah, that's how I try and get the word out.
Do you feel that using the blog tour takes the blog tour company takes some of the pressure off you and helps your book get into the public eye in the long run?
Yeah, hugely. And they also usually create some beautiful graphic that you can share. I'm on Thread now, off of Twitter, X, and they usually create beautiful graphics that you can share on both Facebook and Thread. And yeah, it's I think it's worth it. And you have quotes, that you can use in promotional material, nice things they've said about your book, and put it on the editorial review section on Amazon.
Yeah. Julia from the chat wants to know, are you more of a fast or a slow reader?
As I write, so goes my reading. Yeah, I'm a slow reader too. That's the bane of my existence. I tend to read like at night, like everything's done, and I sit down and okay, now I'm going to read, and then I start nodding off. So I don't make a lot of progress. Yeah, but I wish I read faster. But yeah, I'm afraid I'm a slow reader. Every once in a while, a book will just really grab me, and I read every few minutes that I can. But most of the time, it's a slog to get through the whole thing. Not that the book isn't good; it's just that I get sleepy late at night and I can't finish the book.
Coming into the end of the year, do you have a ranking of like the your top favorite books of the year that you post publicly, or like even a notebook for yourself or anything like that?
I don't, and if you ask me, I won't remember. I remember what I'm reading now, and I remember what I just read. But um, yeah, I should keep a list so I know if somebody starts talking about a book, I say, oh yeah, I read that. Or if I go to the bookstore, I'll see a book. Oh, I just read that. But as far as going back from the year, what I read, I can look and see what my writer's book club did, and then I can remember what I read. I remember one from there called Paper Palace that I really enjoyed. Geez, it's terrible. Yeah, no, I can't remember names of books very often.
As a writer, do you use Goodreads to like track your reading there, or do you just use Goodreads to interact with reviewers?
Um, I use Goodreads to keep track of my reading, like, how much progress have you made, that sort of thing. Sometimes I forget, but I try to keep up with that. And of course, like I said, I read all my reviews. So I'm always going on there to see if there are new reviews. I haven't interacted with reviewers. In fact, the common knowledge or common advice is do not interact with reviewers unless it's something positive and you want to say, oh, thank you. You know, yeah. So that's about it. I've watched webinars on how to use Goodreads. And it's still a bit of a mystery to me as to how it's effective. I did a Goodreads giveaway for the book. Whether or not that did anything, I have absolutely no idea. I had a lot of entries, but you know, it's hard to know. It's hard to know. The only way you know for sure is that I've discovered is through Amazon ads, and they show you like every hour how many impressions you've had, how many clicks you've had, how many purchases, how many sales you've had. And that's it. Facebook ads don't do that. And then of course your royalty statements are delayed. So it's hard to get immediate feedback as to what works and what doesn't. You just kind of throw everything against the wall and see what sticks, I guess.
Are your books exclusive to Amazon, or are your books available everywhere?
It depends. I just got an email from my publisher a little while ago saying that Breathing in Reverse was going to be on Kindle Unlimited. And when it's on Kindle Unlimited, it's just on Amazon, the ebook. The paperback and audiobook. Well, the audiobook isn't coming out till the 19th. But yeah, once a book is in Kindle Unlimited, it's only on Amazon. Right now, When Robins Appear is available everywhere, both the audiobook, paperback, and ebook. And also Breathing in Reverse, and I'm sorry, not Breathing in Reverse, When Robins Appear is coming out in hardcover, maybe next week. So that's my first hardcover. I'm excited about that.
And Sandra from the chat wants to know, has a book ever kept you so interested or on the edge of your seat that it flew by and you couldn't put it down?
Oh, I feel like I need to turn around and look at my bookcase. Yes, of course. Remembering, what was the name of that book? Before the Fall. That's the name of the book I was trying to think of. Before the Fall. And the author writes television script. But again, I can't remember his name. But I thought that was a wonderful book. Yeah.
As we end today, where are people able to follow you on social media to find out about your books?
Yeah, like I said, I'm on Threads. It's the same handle as Twitter, which is at Denise Webb Books. And again, that's Denise, not Denise, which everybody makes that mistake. You won't find me if you type Denise. Website is denisewebb.com. And Facebook, I believe, is just at Denise Webb.
Thank you for coming and chatting with me today.
Oh, it's been fun. I appreciate it. And good luck with the fundraising.
Once again, this is Otherworldly Fundraising. Our fundraising efforts are benefiting one simple wish. Link to donate is located within the description.